that includes everyone here tonight. Welcome to Down to a Science. I'm going to take a couple quick raise your hand polls. So who's here for the first time to any science cafe?
Wow.
Wow. Woo-hoo. That's quite an audience. Okay, here's another, I think, pretty important question for tonight's topic. Who here is interested in food at all? In nutrition? Okay, so that's just a few of you. So I want to talk to you about what a science cafe is, because so many people here have never been to one. It's really about just having a scientist up front here on the same level as you in your arena. He's here for to answer your questions, to hear your experiences, to listen to your comments. So all of that is predicated on your involvement tonight. So I encourage everyone to bring a question, a comment, an experience, what they think of the slides. No holds barred. So I want to see a raise of hands of who's going to ask a question tonight or make a comment. Only 3 people. That's going to be a problem. We're going to have a really short talk if that's the case. So I'm going to be going around facilitating questions and comments from the audience. There's no such thing as a stupid comment or question. Last month at recreational drugs, I believe I uttered aloud, "Cocaine, that's a good drug." I mean, if you can beat that, I encourage you to do so tonight. Before we go much farther, we have a question in the back already. Can people not see in the back?
I can see about 1/3 of the top of the screen.
Okay. We'll get on that right in a second for you. Can everyone hear okay in the back? Excellent. Can anybody not hear in the back? Because if you can't hear me saying this. Couple comments about my science cafe, real quick. Down to Science is on the web. I have a blog with related content for upcoming talks. It's the best place to go if you want to find out what's upcoming. There are articles related to upcoming talks, so you can learn a little bit more about nutritional science or the toxicology of everyday products, which is next month's talk. It's sciencecafesf.com. I encourage everyone to go there. You can see videos of every single talk we've given except for last month. It's a great resource, and I do it all for you, so I encourage you all to go check it out. Secondly, there is a green sign-up sheet at the front counter where you order food. That's my email list sign-up. That's another great way to stay on top of what's coming up event-wise. We do both a series of science cafes and tours of science research facilities. So if you sign up on that email list, you'll keep up to date. For instance, next Saturday, a group of us are going up to a sustainable winery, going on a hike and doing a wine tasting. Let's just say that's just science at its best. Lastly, I just want to say enjoy yourselves tonight. Really have a good time. Ask questions. This is, let me relate just one quick story. I came back from Boston about 5 hours ago. I went to the first ever Science Cafe conference in the United States. There's more than 200 science cafes budding up all over the country, just doing the same thing that we're doing tonight. Gathering to talk about science, talk about social issues, really get involved. And it was just incredibly inspirational to see how much the public cares and desires this kind of conversation all over the world. It's not just limited to the US. So after that, I'm just more overjoyed to have more of these pop up all over the world. So if you're ever interested in saying, how do I run a science cafe? How do I start one? Just come talk to me, because it's surprisingly easy to start your own. So if anyone's interested, come find me. You'll see me plenty throughout the night. And thank you again for coming. Okay.
That, you can, or just Christopher, or whatever you want.
Okay. Well, I'm going to introduce the speaker, and he just wants to go by Christopher. But I think we're going to say Christopher Gardner, Associate Professor of Medicine at Stanford University. He's graciously our speaker tonight on the topic of a solution to the omnivore's dilemma. according to Christopher Gardner. So without further ado, we're going to bring Christopher Gardner up here. And we're actually going to start tonight a little differently than we normally have. And I'm going to start actually doing like a quick interview so you guys can get to know Christopher before we dive into the meat of nutritional science.
The tofu of nutritional science.
So, welcome, Christopher.
Thank you very much.
So, I have a few questions to start. How does one become a nutritional scientist?
One has to go to grad school and take science classes in biochem, which I didn't actually realize because I was a philosophy major undergrad. And I wanted to open a vegetarian restaurant, and I showed up at a graduate program just so they wouldn't make fun of my vegetarian restaurant.
Oh, okay, we need to turn it up. We will do that.
How about
right
if I
now.
talk closer? My mic. Keisha's mic. My mic.
When he's talking, shut yours off.
How is that, everyone?
Maybe I'll blow off the tie thing, and I'll hold it right there. Okay. Okay, start again.
Yeah.
Vegetarian restaurant, won a master's degree, show up Birkenstocks, goatee, laugh at me, only have a philosophy degree, never took science, blew that all off. They made me take science all over again, sign up for grad school, have a purpose for being in college for the first time in my life, get all A's for the first time in my life. They say, why get a master's, get a PhD? Totally lost. Okay, why not get a PhD? I'm not sure I really wanted to start the vegetarian restaurant. And that's how it started.
So have you started a vegetarian restaurant yet?
No, I didn't. It's a lot of hours.
So
Yeah.
what was the impetus for the vegetarian restaurant? Are you vegetarian?
Yeah, so in 1983, Tiffany dumped me. Tiffany was a vegetarian. I was not. I thought maybe becoming a vegetarian I would get her back. Didn't work. She still blew me off. I liked being a vegetarian. It was very internally consistent. I, as a kid, could never go fishing. I could not put a worm on a hook. It bothered me. So all of a sudden, after 20-some years, it was much more internally consistent. I just stayed being a vegetarian. 25 years now.
Hey, did you feel physically better when you turned vegetarian, or was it emotional?
I have to say it was emotional because I've been very healthy and active my whole life. So I can't honestly say I felt the difference.
So vegetarian to graduate school.
Yes.
And people were laughing at you. When was this again? Remind us what year this was.
83, Tiffany dumped me.
We won't do the calculation.
86, they made me take 2 years of undergrad classes again. 88, they let me into grad school. 93, they let me out of grad school. 93, nobody offered me a teaching job because I decided that's what I wanted to be, was a teacher. 93, Stanford offers me a postdoc. I realized quickly postdocs only do research, and I better get in and out quick before they find out how stupid I am as a researcher, because I'm a really good teacher. I make great slides, and I'm a total ham, but I'm awful at research. But then I get good mentoring, and they give me millions of dollars, and I feed and bleed hundreds of people with garlic and soy and veggie diets. And they say, you can be a professor. And I say, okay, forget the vegetarian restaurant. I'm on my way.
By the way, I'm one of those people he's feeding and bleeding right now. I'm in his omega-3 trial where I'm taking 12 pills a day.
You're one of the 12? I had no idea.
Yeah, it's not been pretty so far.
Okay.
By the way, Christopher, I missed a few pills yesterday.
Okay.
Just so you know. It's a study on inflammation, and if you want to keep up to date on what it's like to be in a study, go to the blog and you'll find out about my trials and tribulations in not eating fish or sushi for almost 12 weeks. The question was whether they're placebos or not. And here's the wonderful thing about being in a study. I won't know until the end. So I could be taking sugar pills, or I might be taking fish oil, or I might be taking flax. And I'm hoping that's all you said. That's all you told me. So if there's something else, I'm going to be
Can't take sugar. It's got to be safflower.
Oh, safflower oil.
Or flax. Or fish oil.
Okay. Well, my pill smelled fishy, so I think I'm on to it. And from the postdoc to the Stanford researcher, how did that develop?
Okay, so first what happens is I realize research is really expensive, so I want to be an epidemiological researcher, which means you borrow somebody's massive data set and you just data dredge and you look and you say, oh, this nutrient is associated with that disease. And you do it again and again and again and again. And when you're all done each time, you say, and somebody should run a study to see if it's for real or not, because it's really just an association, and it might be because they exercise more or see their physician more often. Somebody gave me $40,000 to run a little study, and then $80,000, and then $750,000, and I actually got people to change their diet and see what would happen. It was cause and effect. It was intoxicating, and I'm hooked. Except now the NIH is running out of money, and now I'm not only hooked, but I'm also struggling like mad to get grant money.
Wow, that's actually really fascinating to see that even though you're running studies on stuff we care about, whether it be plant-based diets, the effectiveness of garlic, the omega-3s on inflammation, how much of a struggle it is for you to do this work.
Bad time. Anybody wants to give me an endowed chair? I am totally open right now. I'm looking for the endowed chair.
Well, before we get too far into your struggles, I think it's time for you to give a presentation on what you've discovered so far. In 10 years of research, is that how long it's been?
Sure, roughly. Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm not really going to show you what I've discovered. I'm going to give you some ground rules for tonight, because you would not believe how many answers I will not be able to give you. So I need to lower the bar of expectations drastically tonight. That's what this is all about.
That's great. Lower the bar away.
Okay, here we go. Lowering. Okay.
Yeah. Unless you can put that higher.
Wow.
Do you want to pull it out?
Yeah, that works. Okay, this mic works all right? Yeah. Okay, so I tell you what, I'm going to do a land speed record set of slides here. And anybody who wants them, you can email me at cgardner.stanford.edu. That's pretty easy, right? cgardner@stanford.edu.
You won't have to remember that. I will take care of that. Okay. Put it on the website so you guys will certainly know and have the information available.
I'm just going to go kind of fast because I want to give you an overview. Wow, the color's horrible. What happened?
It's just warming up.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
So we had a fabulous speaker and film series on campus where Michael Pollan came to speak, Marion Nessel, Peter Singer. We showed King Corn, we showed Super Size Me, Our Daily Bread, and it was an amazing turnout of people. And it sort of mirrors what's happening tonight. Apparently you all eat, and apparently you're all interested in food for various reasons. So I titled this The Solution to the Omnivore's Dilemma, because everybody seems to be interested in food, not just for health, but for social reasons, ecological reasons, political reasons, all kinds, right? And this is my favorite quote from his new book, The Human Animal is Adapted to and Apparently Can Thrive on an Extraordinary Range of Different Diets, except for the Western diet, however you define it. So you can look at the Tarahumara Indians. They eat all carbohydrates. They just live on rice and beans. They run the equivalent of a marathon every day in this outreach place in Mexico. I told you I'm going to go faster. So the native Alaskans, they just ate fat. They ate whale fat, seal fat, polar bear fat. They just ate tons of fat. They did fine, right? The Maasai, I had a Maasai warrior as an undergraduate in my class. That's all he ate. It was raw meat and raw milk and whatever veggies would grow that day. The Australian Aborigines did fine without us. Then they moved to Sydney and they got diabetes, and somebody hauled them back to the bush, and their diabetes went away when they were hunter-gatherers. But I don't actually think they stayed in the bush. I bet when the experiment was over, they went back to their family and their jobs in Sydney, and their diabetes came back. But their hunter-gatherer lifestyle was fabulously protective. So you can survive on all these different diets, but the omnivore's dilemma is you and I have more options than anybody on the planet has ever had in their whole life. And you have more advice than anybody on the planet has ever had. Fiber, omega-3s.
Oh, let's actually pause. What kind of advice has somebody gotten in the last couple weeks on what to eat? Anyone? Low carbs. No syrup, no tomatoes. You know, that might be good advice.
Yeah.
What? Low sugar. What else? Fortified foods. What does that mean? What is Cereals with omega-3. I can't have that, but... What else? Just yell it out. No hydrogenated oils. No soy products. Okay.
That's horrible.
Well, that's a start. That's what people... Acai berries, wherever those are from.
Where do you get those? Yeah. So it's all pretty clear, right? Everybody knows what all those are and which ones you should pick or not. Well, probably not. So we make all those choices in theory to prevent disease and promote health. And I need to tell you that we really have to separate those. We're pretty good at figuring out nutritionally how to prevent some diseases, which I'll qualify, but we're horrible at figuring out what to do to promote health, okay? So here's the kind of questions I get. I can't believe I still get these questions. Do vegetarians get enough protein? Should I do the low carb? Should I do the low fat? Here's Madonna, she can't figure it out. Here's Kevin Costner, he can't figure out about those omega-3s. Should they be flax? Should it be EPA? Should it be DHA? What's the ratio? Can the vegetarians eat the flax? Oprah was on campus yesterday for the commencement. She had no idea how much vitamin D or calcium she could take, or she should get it from a supplement. Here's this old fellow who thought for sure foods have got to be the best way. There's no way you could get them from fortified foods, although I heard someone say that. But actually, there are some fortified sources that are better than food sources. It depends what nutrient it is. And Gandhi, bless his soul, if he were alive today, he would make me say for sure a veggie diet is better. My 17-year-old is a vegetarian. He eats white bread, white sugar, Coca-Cola, white cheese. He has a monochromatic vegetarian diet. I wish he would have a little red meat or something, because the poor kid does not eat well. My 14-year-old eats really, really well. Okay, so how could we not know the answer to these questions after all this time? Don't you scientists do this stuff? Don't you figure out which diet is healthy so we don't have to keep getting confused by all this information? Okay, I need you to consider the following perspectives. And where's Keish? Where'd you just go? I need you to say 5 minutes and then turn the slides off, okay?
No problem.
You gonna time me? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have a gazillion slides and I'll stop anywhere you want, okay? Consider these perspectives. Nutrition from a nutrient perspective, that's actually the easiest thing for me to get funded. The scientists at NIH love it if it's a nutrient, because it sounds like a chemical, because it sounds like a drug. And I can study that in an isolationist, reductionist model. But consider it from a food perspective. I've actually done some soy studies, garlic studies. I got an oil study going on right now. So food's much more complicated. It doesn't just have one nutrient of interest. It has other things in it too. And a lot of times the grant funders don't like that. They just think that's far too complicated. I have to say I've been fairly successful. I got a garlic study funded. I got a vegetarian diet study funded. I got an Atkins versus Zone versus Ornish read the book weight loss study funded that wasn't isolationist. It was about as public healthy as I could make it, but it also had some matched stuff, some reductionist stuff that the grant reviewers like. So consider from a cultural perspective is actually a bigger step where the bigger buck probably is, and nobody's funding this stuff. So if we started the food and we expand it, don't you actually really want to know if an Asian diet is better than a Mediterranean diet, is better than a vegetarian diet, is better than a Latin American diet? Nobody will fund that. What they'll do is they'll look at people who eat a Latin American diet or a Mediterranean diet, and they'll say, oh, the disease rates are higher or lower in that group versus the other one. I wonder which chemical it is. Let's do a drug study and figure out which one of the 1,000 chemicals in that diet can explain the entire rate of disease difference. And they always screw up. They can't find, it's never one. Okay? So switch perspectives for a minute. Those are the things we eat that might promote our health. And what kind of health are we looking at? So one perspective is an acute deficiency disease perspective. And we're actually pretty good at this. Scurvy. We know all about scurvy, okay? I'm going to see if I can say this all in one breath, but collagen holds your teeth together. To make collagen, you have to go through a post-translational hydroxylation of proline and lysine, requiring a metalloenzyme that has iron in it, which vitamin C keeps reduced. no vitamin C, no reduced metalloenzyme, no post-translational hydroxylation of proline and lysine, no fully formed collagen. You bleed and your teeth fall out. How many of you have had scurvy or know someone with scurvy? See, we figured this one out. There is no problem with this one. Okay, we got that one nailed. How about anemia? That's actually pretty common, but there's several kinds of anemia. So we got nice red cells here, and we got anemic cells over there. Well, we know the way that we make red cells. We start with this erythroblast, and it goes through a bunch of stuff. It depends how much hemoglobin you have. If you don't have enough iron, your hemoglobin never fills up enough, and you get these pale red cells that are smaller than usual. We actually know how that works, and we know how to give you enough iron. Sometimes a supplement is okay. If you've ever seen anybody with a goiter, anybody seen anybody with a goiter? Usually there's a... Wow, that is amazing. That is the biggest... You must be a really... Wow. Where do you all come from?
Actually, that's a great question. Who had...
Many years?
I have never seen that many goiters. Known people who knew that many goiters in an audience.
Can you raise your hands again if you know somebody with a goiter? I'm going to get a comment from...
Yeah.
I'm going to get a comment from one if I can squeeze through right
I thought
here.
we had that one nailed.
How do you think?
I had a neighbor who had a goiter.
Neighbor here?
No,
In New York. How many years ago? 10 years ago. That's not very long.
Okay. 10 years ago in New York. Any other goiters? In the U.S.?
Just yell it out. I'll repeat it. Here in San Francisco.
Here in San Francisco. Okay, wait. Can I see a show of hands? How many U.S. goiters were the people that you knew? How many in a foreign country goiters did you see? Oh, it's really... Okay, I don't want to get stuck here. That's amazing. Anyway, it's not really that common because we figured this whole thing out. There's this protein in your thyroid gland that traps iodine, that sticks it on tyrosine residues in this long string of amino acids. And the iodines hook on together, and they jump on top of each other on these tyrosine residues as they break off, and they make T3 and T4, which are your thyroid hormones. They control your metabolism, and it's usually that you're deficient in iodine, so we iodized salt. And also, if you get your food from a variety of places, you're really unlikely to get an iodine deficiency. It comes when you wash it out of the soil, but if you get your food from all over the planet, which we do now, it's hard to get in a place that's so isolated you don't have enough iodine. Okay, so we know the acute deficiency diseases. We understand those really well because the goiter swells up, and it's reversible. It's not permanent, so you can get it to go down. You can become anemic, and you can get rid of it. You can see the signs of scurvy, and you can get rid of it. But they come on fast, and they go away fast. Fast being months or years, maybe, okay? So then there's this other side that everybody's interested in now because we got rid of a lot of the deficiency diseases, or we know how to handle them. So the thing that sells in nutrition now is heart disease and cancer and diabetes and obesity. So we call these chronic because how many of you expect to have a heart attack tomorrow? No takers today. The next week, the next month. Really, if I was going to study these, the problem is I got to divide this half of the room and tell you all to eat the Ornish diet, and this half of the room, and you all got to eat the Atkins diet for 40 years. Is that okay? Because I just got this idea. I'm not sure if it'll work or not. I just need you to eat a completely different way for 40 years because I know you're not going to have a heart attack or cancer tomorrow. You're all too young in this group. You're all too healthy. You're too impervious here. So, boy, those ones are really hard to figure out. So what happens is, in the scientific world of reductionism, we take the whole diet, maybe one food in the diet, maybe one component of one food in the diet, and it's too long to wait till somebody gets a disease. So what we do is we try to study a risk factor. We try to get a cholesterol or blood pressure or something like that, okay? So from a chronic disease risk factor perspective, we're a little better at that. We can do lots of studies. Let me show you my favorite vegetarian study that I did. We fed 125 people either a low-fat diet that was convenience food or my favorite low-fat plant-based recipes. And I was so clever here. See if you can tell how clever I was. They both have the same amount of total fat, 30%. That was the national recommendation. They both have 10% saturated fat, so that's the reductionist part. They're matched, chemically analyzed, etc. We actually made all this food for 125 people for a month. It took, it was $750,000 to feed all these people. They come in once a day for lunch or dinner and leave and come back the next day for a couple more meals, and they take 2 with them every time they go. And so the low-fat convenience food diet lowered their total and LDL cholesterol, but the low-fat Christopher's favorite vegetarian recipes doubled the lowering of the bad cholesterol. It was great. It worked. I don't know, it was the fiber or the garlic or the soy or what. I didn't really even care. I wanted to say it was a low-fat diet that didn't just say what to avoid, not just avoiding fat, but including all these other things. Now, there's a couple of downsides. I don't know which thing did it that was extra. It was a whole diet. I fed them all. Nobody figured out how to do it on their own, so I know when the study was over, nobody kept doing it. I don't know if I saved a single life. I lowered cholesterol. The Women's Health Initiative lowered cholesterol, and more women on estrogen died, and they had to stop the trial. Just because you lower a risk factor doesn't mean you save a life. And the frustrating thing is you can't feel your cholesterol the next day, so you don't have the incentive. Oh my God, I feel so much better. Oh, that cholesterol. Oh, it got down there. Oh, it's great. It feels great. It's so much lower. I'm going to do this forever and ever and ever. You have to do it forever. If that was going to help, it's not just that month. You have to eat that way for the rest of your life if that were to work.
So we're at 5 minutes. So if you have a couple more, just crank through them.
Okay, so we're going to crank through a couple more. What else do I have here? Okay, I'm going to skip these very, very clever studies. So picture this. Here's nutrients, foods, and culture. And here's the 3 kinds of diseases. And here's what we know and don't know. We're really good at nutrients and acute deficiency diseases. And after that, we get worse and worse and worse. Only because it's too hard to do them. Now, since I have 4.5 minutes left, I'll show you why. Here's the tools we have. We compare 40 countries and we see who has one disease rate higher than another. And then we say, oh, I know why. It's because the French drink more wine or they take longer lunch breaks. Or we say Seventh-day Adventists eat vegetarian diets, but you know, they don't smoke and they do other things that are better too. Or we do case control studies. Here's 500-600 women who had breast cancer and 1,000 who didn't. And we asked them how much tofu they ate, and that's another way to figure it out, except not only did they eat less tofu the longer they were in the US, they did other things. That doesn't prove it. I'm going to skip these cohort studies. I looked at my slides at the last minute, realized I forgot to put anything in here, so I'll talk about those later. Animal studies. Oh, we can do things to animals we can never do to humans to find the mechanism, right? Skipping that. And then we have the clinical trial. Oh, God, if we got all the other evidence, if we have all the pieces in line, we get the gazillion dollars to see if we can save any lives. This is it. This is how I make my living. If I can fill in all the red things, if we feed X versus the other thing to a group of them at a certain dose for a duration of time, there'll be more or less of it. That's what I do for a living. I just fill in all the red parts. Okay? So here's a fantastic HOPE study for vitamin E. They gave thousands of people vitamin E to try to prevent a heart attack. It didn't work. They gave 30,000 smoking Finnish men beta-carotene or a placebo to try to lower lung cancer and heart disease. They had more lung cancer and heart disease in the group who got the beta-carotene. Okay? Uh-oh. I'm going to skip that. So it's a really complicated puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to it. Okay? So in nutrition, what we focus on is macronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and this new stuff called phytochemicals. We figure out how to digest it, how to transport it. We look at deficiency diseases. We get recommendations from the USDA, from American Heart. Lots of politics behind the recommendations come out. Atrocities, really, if you get down to it. What else did I have here? Did something else pop up yet? Okay, and then we have some supplements out there. Most of them don't work. Some of them are okay. It depends how crappy your diet is. If you have a really crappy diet, you're going to be better off eating supplements than not. But if you eat a good diet, is it worth hedging your bet? And then we got cultural issues, and we got food politics issues, and okay, ding, that was my 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We're actually going to do one thing. We're
I have
going to
like
switch
100
mics.
more slides, but we'll do that.
Let's take a few questions. We can come back to more slides, but let's take a few questions on what you've seen so far. Here we go.
Do we really have to worry much about nutrition considering that we're living longer than we have before and healthier for a longer period of time? They say that, today's 60 is just today's 40 or whatever. So do we need to worry?
Hang on, before you answer that, do you consider that you have a good nutritional diet?
How old do you think I am? No, tell me truthfully. Yesterday was my birthday.
Truthfully, I would say 50.
I turned 57 yesterday.
Woo-hoo. But is that the only way we tell?
Well, I figure if I'm... Okay. I figure...
Oh. Yeah, just turn it up all the way up.
Is it on? Okay. I figure if I look okay on the outside, I'm probably pretty much okay on the inside, too.
Who else feels that way? If they look good on the outside, you think you feel good on the inside? No. Yeah. Look good on the outside, feel good on the inside. So what do you think?
Yes. So it's definitely hard to stare somebody in the face and say you're doing the wrong thing. You didn't lower your saturated fat enough, you didn't get enough fiber, and you don't have diabetes, and you don't have hypertension, and you don't have anything else, so you must be doing something wrong because you're eating the wrong thing, right? It's very hard to say that. So what we're looking for is, the older you get, you got to die of something, so you either run out of air, that would be great, or you get more debilitated as you go, and your mind goes, and your flexibility goes, and so we try to keep that going as long as you can, but you're right, there are definitely some outliers that make it hard to make a really strong case that you have to eat well all your life. That's where the chronic disease part comes in. If you had a condition that went away as soon as you felt it, when you ate something different, that would be more compelling. The other ones are harder to prove.
Let me ask a follow-up to that. Are we asking the right person, a nutritional scientist? Or should we be talking to our grandmother? Or should we be talking to... Nutritionist. Or should we be just following our own common sense? Who is the right authority on nutrition?
Oh, I don't have any. Lots of different perspectives. Physicians, nutritionists, dietitians who really can tell you how to eat, who don't do the studies.
Who do you look towards?
Michael Pollan.
Journalists, then.
Well, honestly, I'll tell you why I asked. This is so frustrating. We nutritionists do the next study and the next study and often reverse what was said before, that a lot of you are pissed off with us and you're mad at us for the number of times. We didn't really change. If you really got us in the same room, we agree on most of the stuff altogether. It's frustrating to give you sound bites and simple messages. So what's really interesting now is it's occurred to me that something far more motivating than health is global warming and sustainability and polluted waters and polluted soil. And I'm actually finding those to be much more compelling, and it's the same diet we push from a health perspective, but it's a different angle, and I'm finding that much more compelling than pushing my health message.
I'm going to attest to that because I got an email about greenhouse gas emissions from meat production, red meat production, saying it was 150% worse of a contributor than even chicken or clearly vegetables as well. And my friend's been trying to get me to become a vegetarian forever, so I finally shot her a note saying, okay, I guess you're right. And I actually have noticed my behavior has changed since seeing that. So for rightly or wrongly, I will validate that point for you.
So for some people, that's the motivating factor. And I actually think it's more compelling than the health message, especially when it comes to these chronic health conditions.
Yeah, but let's track back to who's motivated by health conditions when it comes to their food. Like what they think about their health. Okay, coming back right here. What are you motivated by when you start choosing your food?
Well, it's funny because you said if you look good on the outside, then you're fine on the inside, and I am the exact opposite. I look fine on the outside, but I've been sick for almost 3 years, and sometimes debilitatingly so. So I've been a Whole Foods health queen aisle. I've tried a series of supplements, different brands for effectiveness. With the menopause, it's pure hell. So I have other variables that contribute to my being sick. So I go from estrogen or phytoestrogen supplements, all natural, vitamin E, I take thyroid support, turmeric for heat.
Can I pop in and ask a quick follow-up? How do you decide what supplements to take?
Well, over the past 2.5 years, I've been going through trial and error to see what works. And my system changes all the time. It's like my chemical balance seems to change. So if I find something that seems to work for a couple of months, on the third month, it might not be effective anymore.
Who else here takes supplements in some way, shape, or form? Pretty significant. So you made a comment just a couple minutes ago about supplements. You think some are great, some aren't. So I'd love to hear your comments about supplements.
Yeah, so dietary supplements are really hard to figure out. If you watch the media on this, some of them actually don't even have what they say they have. For the first time last year, the FDA got some kind of status approval that it was illegal to not have in it what you say you had in it. Is that frightening? The FDA doesn't actually work to show, doesn't validate that they work. The biggest step forward they have is to make it illegal to say they have something that they don't really have in it, because in the past a lot of folks, especially these botanicals or spices, they didn't even say what was accurately in the supplement itself.
Who knew that the FDA doesn't regulate, up until last year, they don't regulate what's in supplements? Oh, this is actually a very educated crowd.
Who didn't know that the FDA doesn't regulate any supplements? Okay, so a lot of you are on the fence.
Do you take any supplements, by the way?
For a little while I took vitamin E when it was all the rage, and I took a multivitamin for a couple years, and now nothing. I'm on the edge for vitamin D. I think about vitamin D maybe. I might do iron if I was a woman. I might do calcium if I was a woman. Seems like there's one other one. Vitamin D. Fish oil. Yeah, I might do the fish oil.
Well, that's good news for me.
That's where I would go.
But how do you come to those decisions?
Looking at the trial evidence. So if there is enough evidence for health benefits. So vitamin D in particular is a fascinating one. I pretty much avoid the ones that you could have got from food anyway. I get very frustrated if somebody takes a vitamin C supplement. First of all, it doesn't get rid of your cold, if any of you thought it did, and zinc doesn't, and echinacea doesn't either. And those are really easy to figure out. Think of it, it's acute. How many sniffles, how many sneezes, it doesn't take a lifetime. Okay, none of those work. How can you get enough vitamin C? Oh my God, you could eat food. You could eat broccoli and tomatoes and oranges. That'd be great. Okay, vitamin D, very different. There's almost no food sources. In fact, it shouldn't even be a nutrient, except you make it when the sun hits your skin. And so many of us slather on suntan lotion now. They're actually not making as much D as we evolved. And we're all clothed. And we're wearing hats. And we're migrating north. And the sky's getting covered up or something. So there aren't a lot of food sources of vitamin D. And it looks more and more like vitamin D is linked to some health benefits. And intuitively, I like it because I can understand how we evolved getting more vitamin D from more sun exposure that we're not getting anymore. Oh, we got somebody in the...
Well, I'm handling the mic back here. I'm all the way in the back, and I'm going to be working all the way back forward to all those people that have hands up.
So vitamin D, I would like anything that you can't get from food. When vitamin E was all the rage, the amount that looked like it was beneficial was an amount you couldn't get from food unless you had 6 bowls of wheat germ every single day. Turned out it didn't work though, but at the time it looked really promising, and you couldn't have got it from food. You could have got a little from food, but not nearly the amount they thought helped. And then they found out the amount they thought helped didn't help. So I stopped that one.
I just want to thank you for giving this talk because obviously, preventative medicine, barring any unforeseen circumstances, is the way to go for living a long and healthy life. So, diet and exercise obviously are important. So, with all the antioxidant craze going on, and there's new end points such as highly sensitive CRP and whatnot. What is your take on the use of antioxidants, either over the counter or prescription? Just in terms of the studies and what your view is on maybe some long-term outcomes.
Before you answer that, do you take antioxidants?
Is beer an antioxidant?
I hope so.
Dark beer.
So, why would you take antioxidants?
there's a whole, the antioxidant supposedly reduces free radicals that can cause tissue damage and an inflammatory mechanism, like involved in lipid deposition into your arteries and stuff like that.
Wow, that's a pretty technical thing. Do you do that? How did you come to determine that was the right way to go?
I was like Oprah.
So what's your take on antioxidants?
So antioxidants seem to underlie everything, or actually oxidative degradation seems to underlie cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. And there are thousands of antioxidants. And the problem is if you pick one in a pill, a lot of them haven't worked. And the frustrating thing is your foods are full of them if you eat a plant-based diet. So if you ate broccoli and tomatoes and soy and blueberries and eggplant, and you'd be getting hundreds of them in the doses that you evolved eating, and they would probably be protective, but vitamin E didn't work, beta-carotene didn't work, vitamin C didn't work, in pills, in megadoses, all by themselves. In fact, some of those pills in clinical trials in really high doses acted as pro-oxidants instead of antioxidants, because that's the American way, is let's make sure this works. Let's give somebody 40 times what they could give in food. Son of a gun, it backfired. How could that have ever happened? If you get them from foods, you can't overdose. You would get the amount that came in the food. It would be almost impossible to overdose. And if you get a variety of foods that have antioxidants, and I can tell you what they look like, they're full of colors. Get your 5 colors a day. Don't get 5 vegetables and fruits a day. Get 5 colors a day, and you're pretty much covered. Have some blueberries and some carrots and some red bell peppers, and keep going like that. Get 5 colors a day. I can't tell you if it's going to save you from any of those diseases, but it's probably a lot safer than taking the antioxidant pills. Now, if you ate that way and you took an antioxidant pill on top of that, who came up with a combination of antioxidants that you're taking, given that there's thousands of them and nobody knows which dose works best, and they never use one, they put them all together. Right now we have a study where we have people taking 4 antioxidants in a cocktail that's very commonly available, and we have people doubling their intake of carotenoid-rich foods, vitamin E-rich foods, selenium-rich foods, and vitamin C-rich foods. And it may not work, but we're looking at inflammation as an outcome of doubling your food intake versus popping a pill. The hypothesis was the foods would work better because they have more than the 4 antioxidants. They have hundreds of them. But I don't know if it worked. We're in the middle.
We have a question back here, but first, John, wherever you are, your pizza is ready.
Well, I take supplements, but I'm definitely a huge advocate of getting them first from my diet, nutrients that is. But now, what kinds of foods you're choosing, doesn't that affect, like if you're choosing organic, aren't there going to be more nutrient dense than, let's say, the conventional fruits and vegetables?
Ooh, organic versus non-organic, which is better?
Don't you have a follow-up question for her?
No, not this time.
Ah, come on. Okay. All right, so it's a fabulous question, organic versus non-organic. I do remember talking to these guys who make supplements with their crops, and they have one whole field of commercial broccoli and one whole field of organic broccoli. And the organic broccoli was really scraggly and sparse, and the commercial was flourishing, but they were actually interested in what they thought was an active agent of botanical chemical in the broccoli, and they got a higher yield in the sparse organic broccoli than they did in the huge flourishing commercial. So that was one plug for organic. On the other hand, they're soon to come out with organic Coke. Honest to God, I kid you not. Organic as a term is now abused. It's not going to last much longer. It's the organic industrial complex. What happens is in the food industry, not many niches in the food industry move at all. You've got to hold on to that margin. The only one that's moving right now is organics. They're doubling every single year. So people are jumping on the bandwagon. And my wife slapped my hand the other day. I came home with organic blueberries from New Zealand. From New Zealand. Okay, I got maybe a couple more nutrients, and then I wiped out some more trees and some more oil fields. So couldn't I have just waited a couple more weeks? Because they're in my farmer's market now. So Is organic better? Not for sure, because they're growing it in huge fields now, and really sustainable is a better word. Farmer's market and sustainable is probably better than organic. Plus, sometimes there's some really crappy looking organic stuff, and there's some really bright, flourishing commercial stuff. 1,000 people to only eat commercial veggies for the rest of their lives to see who lives or dies. So nobody will answer that question for you. So intuitively it has to make sense. Intuitively, yes, there's less pesticide, that's great. But is your organic from New Zealand, like my blueberries were, or is it from your farmer's market? What if you had organic from New Zealand and sustainable, but not organic, from your farmer's market? I'd go farmer's market.
Well, let's find out what the audience is doing. Who here shops organic? Like pretty exclusively. Okay, you're the guinea pig. Where do you shop organic?
Farmers market,
Why?
better quality produce.
It tastes better? Is that what you mean by quality, or what is it? What do you mean by quality?
Tastes better.
It tastes better. And do you always go to the farmer's market for your food? Do you ever buy organic stuff at the grocery store? What do you buy? This is getting personal.
I will only buy organic carrots. I will only buy organic strawberries. I will only buy organic celery, and that's based from folks that I know that work in the food industry and have told me about the chemical toxins found in those.
Oh, so you motivated from fear. Excellent.
Can I add to that? There are lists. There's the dirty dozen. There are foods that carry the most pesticides and the ones that are least important to have organic.
Well,
Right,
she has a little story to attach, if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, please.
So I used to work in a lab, and we would make media. One of the medias was carrot-based, and our fungus would not grow in it. We had to use organic in order to get our fungus to grow in it.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's like the bugs won't eat white bread on the shelf because they know it's not nutritious enough to make them survive. It'll stay forever. The Twinkie that lives forever has nothing nutritious in it.
So you're about to take off on George Carlin, the 12 foods that are pesticide-laden that you should not utter.
Yeah, and I actually don't have the list, but you can find tons of websites that will say this. So, for example, red bell peppers, bad. You really should get organic red bell peppers. Mangoes, not that big a deal. They've got a skin on the outside. So you can. I don't have a ready to speak about
Is there a
this.
common trait that's associated with these, like shallow skin, where they're farmed?
I don't have
what they're treated with?
I don't have
Okay.
a simple one for you. No.
Okay, we have a question, right?
My mother and I go to the same doctor, and my mom is, can I tell him?
Older than you.
My mom is 83 years old. I think she does pretty well. But so our doctor bases everything that I do on everything that's happened to her in her history, and I need to take this because of that. And I have a very different diet and lifestyle, of course, than what my mother did. So I guess I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Of course I'm going to interrupt you. Do you trust your doctor?
I thought so.
What gives you pause?
Well, when we're talking about the supplements, there are things like, osteoporosis and the need for calcium and all the different pharmaceuticals now that go along with that disease. So I guess that's what I'm...
Did he recommend something to you? She. No offense. She recommend anything to you?
1,500 milligrams of calcium a day and vitamin D, and then I also take a pill called Fosamax. And my mother's had some heart disease, so just sort of treating me as if I'm kind of predisposed for all of those things.
So it does make sense. There's clearly a genetic link there. But wait, we have audience participation. Yes?
No, he has another question on a different topic.
Okay, but your mom hasn't broken her hip. Do you have weak bones? Oh, she has. Okay, so let me ask you, if you saw the newspaper headlines in 2007, one week said, "Too bad calcium doesn't work after all these years," and the next month it said, "Oh, never mind, it still does." Did you see those? I think this is a fabulous example to provide for you. Okay, so the headline that said calcium doesn't work for your bones. Now picture what this calcium is. If it saves you from bone fractures, basically you're supposed to take it your whole life. It actually helps adolescence. It helps as you're putting on peak bone mass up till the time you're about 35. And then from 35 on, your bone starts to deteriorate, but you can slow the deterioration. But you don't actually get the hip fracture till your 70s, 80s, 90s. The Women's Health Initiative, largest clinical trial ever done in the planet. Tens of thousands of women. Main purpose was to look at estrogen, which didn't happen to work for various reasons. And then there was a diet arm of the trial that we're not going to go into. And they decided to add a third component, calcium and vitamin D, because they had so many women involved in this. And when they were all done, there was a 12% reduction in hip fractures in the women who took it. It wasn't statistically significant, so the headlines had to read, calcium doesn't prevent hip fractures. Now I need to tell you the rest of the story because, well, I just have to tell you the rest of the story. So, the rest of the story is, the women ranged in age from 50 to mid-70s. The ones who had the hip fractures were all in their 70s. If you looked at just the women who were 70 and older, there was a 33% reduction in hip fractures that was statistically significant. Not all the women took all their pills. That's true. Keish missed some of his pills yesterday. He admitted it. You are not rats, you're humans. If you only looked at the women who took all their pills, there was a 25% reduction that was statistically significant. The worst part was, given that the women were already doing estrogen and a diet part of the trial, they thought this was a huge imposition and they might not agree to a third component yet if they made them change their life even more. A lot of women were already taking calcium and vitamin D, and they were not asked to stop if they were already taking it. So the average calcium and vitamin D intake at baseline when the study started was the recommended daily allowance. So when they looked at the women, the subset who weren't getting enough at baseline, there was a reduction in hip fractures. And then one side of the audience said, that's not fair, that's data dredging. You asked the big question with 40,000 women, and it wasn't statistically significant, so you have to tell the public it's useless to take calcium. How many women in this audience, or guys, how many take a calcium supplement? It's one of the most common things out there. So I would say, yeah, it is the most common dietary supplement, and the headline said it's not worth taking. But what do you think about those little side stories? Are those at least a little compelling? And how cheap is it? It's really cheap. How safe is it? It's really safe. How hard is it to swallow? They actually make this. I have the chocolate ones, not to have the calcium. I just like the chocolate chewable ones. That's my excuse for having chocolate in the morning. So there's a frustration for me, is a massive clinical trial, which we usually don't get. The other thing that was interesting is bone density did better, but they didn't save hip fractures in the main study. You don't care if your bone density gets better if you don't save the hip fracture, right? But it was all these little side stories that went with it. So it's a very complicated picture to present. And the headline said, calcium's no good for you. A month later, they finished the study with 1,500 women only in their 70s and older, and it worked, but only if you took the pills, and half of them didn't take the pills. And so they actually had to conclude it didn't work from a public health perspective, but it did if you took all the pills. Isn't that what you want to know? If you took all the pills, would it work? So, oh my God, back and forth on something as simple as calcium.
If anyone wonders why I run a science cafe, it was for exactly that. Because you can't distill this down into one headline, can you?
Right.
So I have a general question that builds off this. Who looks to their doctor for some nutritional advice? Just raise of hands. A fair amount of people. Now, I have a tough question for you. What, as an MD...
No PhD.
Oh, okay, you have PhD. Okay, but what are the chances that my general practitioner doctor read that deep into the study? And so, can I trust his advice because he has
or
the
hers.
time, or hers? Thank you. Do they have the time and expertise to go down this deep with nutrition, which is not necessarily what they are getting paid to do?
No, they really don't get trained. Physicians don't get trained, and they complain about it, but there's so much they're cramming in their heads these days, there isn't really room for much more. I'd say it's very gratifying. I teach an undergraduate class on human nutrition to human biology students at Stanford. Half of them go on to become MDs, and they're fascinated with this. They really want to know this, and we actually have med students at Stanford complaining that they don't get enough nutrition. And so we're actually revamping the nutrition curriculum, which right now is just an online module to take for all of Stanford Medical School. But they're revamping it because they want more. So medical schools all over the country are adding more, but these poor physicians, if you can imagine how much new stuff comes out every year that they're also cramming in their heads, it's tough to keep up. You should see a nutrition specialist.
I'm sure many people here feel so bad for the physicians out there.
Okay.
So many reasons. But my friend that just graduated medical school just, was a little outraged when you just said that. But we won't point him out anywhere. We have another question.
Sure. I am reminded a little bit in this talk of a famous essay. I don't know how many people have read it, but it has nothing to do with science. It's called The Fox and the Hedgehog by Isaiah Berlin, and it attacked types of people in the modern world and how they interacted with each other and what modernity was doing to that. And I found it very interesting listening to your talk. It seemed to be a pretty subtle refutation of a determinism in science that's incapable of answering some questions as you get further and further away from deterministic questions. And yet it seems in all the questions here and in your own responses, most of the response seems to be a deterministic, if I could build a better mousetrap, or if that mousetrap could be more predictive of what I wanted to answer, I could have a more thoughtful, reasoned, intellectual, scientific discourse on what the correct action would be prospectively, right? And so my question is, I think Michael Pollan's books at the end seem to be a fairly withering critique of that mindset applied towards answering certain questions. And you had a beautiful graph or slide up there that showed declining knowledge as you increase scalar factors or whatever. And my question for you is, what is your own theory of where science, falsification, the generation of hypothesis, and the refutation, where the cutting edge is, where a methodological approach like that is particularly useful, and where it's not? Is it just one of designing a better mousetrap, or is there something more fundamental to the proposition that's getting unnoticed or not?
Okay, I'm going to have him pause. Okay, we're at a bar. So I want you to distill that down to a simple question.
Sure. I mean, if the whole point is that asking what supplement to take is not the right solution, why have most people asked, should I take the same supplement or not?
That wasn't the direction I really wanted to go. I was really trying to track that whole thing there. Now you messed me up with the simple question. Can I go back to the bigger question? Being a nutrition scientist and asking for millions of dollars to do these studies and seeing some of them not work, even though lots of previous studies led up to that hypothesis to test and yet it didn't work, I've pretty much come to the conclusion that we are not going to figure out nutritionally how to reduce chronic disease. We are not. We aren't going to fund studies of the Mediterranean diet versus the Asian diet. We aren't even going to fund broccoli versus meat. It's not going to happen. I know broccoli would win. Well, I don't really know because I haven't done the study, but it's not going to happen because the money's not behind it. The money for clinical trials to save lives comes from drug companies that have something to benefit. Okay, so you're not going to see the broccoli farmers all band together and come up with the 40-year study to have people double their broccoli intake. You're never going to know. So you're going to need to base your diet on something that just sounds intuitive or consistent at least. So broccoli has antioxidants, red bell peppers have antioxidants. A lot of these processed crappy foods that we eat don't resemble food anymore. So part of that is just intuition. That's my biggest shift in this last year, has been to recognize that we'll never get those big answers. We can get the small ones. Your menopausal symptoms, we're going to deal with those. The soy isoflavones don't work. You can do a quick study with soy isoflavones. They're phytoestrogens. They don't help your menopausal symptoms. Asthma, I might do a study with kids and raw milk. There's a guy who makes raw milk in California, and he says the exposure to probiotics actually gives your immune system a kick in the pants, and you're better at fighting off asthma. I can get kids to blow into a spirometer any day of the week. So I have this outcome that I can measure right away. Some of those things lend themselves to nutrition science. Cancer and heart disease and diabetes and obesity don't. So we won't have those big answers for you. So you're going to have to go with the farmer's market approach, the global warming approach, the ecological carbon footprint approach, because you're not going to have anything better in the next year, decade, or 30 years in those big areas.
So we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to take a 10 to 15 minute break. But all those people that have hands up, you guys are very interested in what's happening. I'm going to take a mental picture, and we're going to come back to you after the break. But I actually want to plant one question now. Is you said, you know, pharma companies pay for all of this. We actually did a science cafe on sort of the economics of a pharma company. We talked about Vioxx and how all of that happened. And I actually want to plant the seed of how can we change that? You know, part of this science cafe is that, you know, we don't just stand here and accept what is that we can start to challenge what is.